Here we go with this shit again. Another Trump assassination attempt, another dumb butt rifle build to roast. Believe it or not, the rifle used this time, which was not an AK-47, makes the rifle from last time look like an Accuracy International sniper rifle in comparison. I pulled up the criminal complaint, and here are the details. On September 15, former President Trump, golfing at his golf club in West Palm, a Secret Service agent in his detail was walking the perimeter when he notices a rifle poking out from the bushes. And by the way, I'd love to have been there for that, just to see the whole thing go down. Secret Service agent, minding his business, walking the perimeter, probably bored out of his gourd, and then all of a sudden, what's that? Probably squinted his eyes and looked at it real good, like something you wake up to in your front yard that wasn't there the night before. This agent probably has been waiting his whole life for this moment. He unholsters his duty weapon, cracks off a couple shots at the shooter. As an attorney, probably questionable judgment, but at the same time, the arrest was made, there were no injuries, and I will never second guess an all's well that ends well outcome. Would-be assassin Ryan Ruth takes off and leaves all of his shit behind. Of course, the getaway vehicle is a Nissan. The Secret Service finds that Ruth has been posted up in the woods along the fence line for 12 hours with a GoPro, bag of food, probably Cane's chicken tenders if it were me, a backpack with reportedly ceramic bulletproof plates, and an SKS rifle with a scope and a destroyed serial number. I'm assuming the serial number was destroyed because Ruth was a felon, so whoever gave him the rifle probably didn't want it to get traced back to him. Either that or Ruth could have destroyed it himself just in case he had to ditch it, make good on his escape, and he didn't want it to be traced back to him. Ruth was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon because apparently about 20 years ago he barricaded himself into his roofing business with a machine gun after he was pulled over on a routine traffic stop. I think we've all been there. You get pulled over, you don't want to deal with it, you're having a bad day already. In one way or another, every now and then, we all find ourselves holed up at our roofing business with a machine gun. For most of us, metaphorically speaking, but for some of us, like Mr. Ruth, literally. Unfortunately, the "I had a bad day" defense didn't play well in front of the judge or jury because apparently he was convicted of some zesty felonies, I think like possession of a weapon of mass destruction, something like that. And he's got a rap sheet a mile long, bounce checks, tax evasion. Everyone hates taxes, so can't really blame him for that one. Possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, max penalty of 15 years in prison with a $250,000 fine. Possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number, 5 years in prison, another $250,000. That's a lot of Ruth's roofs. And I swear to God, if he wasn't calling his business Ruth's Roofs, then he's a worse marketer than he is an assassin. Let's get into the gun. Mainstream media calling it an AK-47. As usual, mainstream media incorrect. It's an SKS. Let's talk about what the SKS is after we talk about what it's not. Not an AK. To a novice, the SKS kind of looks like an AK-47, especially if you replace the fixed 10-round SKS magazine with a longer banana mag, but the SKS was manufactured with a traditional stock instead of a pistol grip configuration, and perhaps more significantly, the SKS uses a short-stroke piston operating system, unlike the AK's long-stroke system. There are some commonalities, including the use of 7.62 by 39mm ammunition, but other than that, not many. Russia made nearly 3 million SKSs before the gun was rendered totally obsolete with the introduction of the AK-47 less than 10 years after the SKS was invented. Obviously, it was made under license in China, Yugoslavia, other countries. The SKS itself, perhaps not ideal as a sniper rifle in this role, but not totally unusable either. You're talking similar accuracy to the AK-47. AK-47s have an undeserved reputation for being inaccurate. I've shot 2.5-inch groups at 100 yards with my cheapest Serbian AK, and groups as tight as 1.75 inches with my off-the-rack Russian Saiga SGL-21 in the past. Really, the limiting factor is the 7.62 by 39 round used by the AK and the SKS. It's a heavy round with trajectory like a wet rag. Hard to trust it beyond 300 yards. Shoulder width of your average male, 16 to 17 inches, meaning that even with a 3-inch gun, a good shot at 500 yards will land somewhere in that space. So the accuracy isn't as much of a problem as the ballistics of the SKS's bullet. My buddy Henry at 9-Hole Reviews did an excellent practical accuracy test with the Chinese SKS. He could make hits on torso targets 100% of the time using just iron sights, no scope, and a plain Jane SKS inside of 150 yards. At 200 yards and beyond, he's missing at least 3 out of 10 shots. I would think with a properly mounted scope, making hits at 300 yards is doable if you have your dope dialed in. Remember that the first Trump assassination attempt took place at half that distance, 150 yards, and really this should have been a chip shot even with iron sights. The point here is the SKS is far from ideal. It's relatively short range due to the ballistics of the 7.62x39 round and so-so accuracy, but you could still get the job done within 200 yards. If it were stock, and not a piece of shit like this, that is. 20 years ago, it was easy to find Yugoslavian and Chinese SKS rifles for $100 or less, brand new in the Cosmoline. Because of how inexpensive and popular they were, of course, Sportsman's Guide, Cheaper Than Dirt have to ruin it for everyone. They start cranking out a bunch of Chinese horse shit to put on these guns, plastic stocks, shitty optic mounts. One of the worst offenders, the extended magazine. The original SKS had a perfectly fine 10-round fixed box magazine, but Bubba'd's figured out that you can rip that magazine out, weld the tab on the magazine to an AK mag. Now you've got a 30-round banana mag that triples your capacity while being questionable in terms of reliability and not exactly easy to swap on the fly either, pretty much defeating their purpose. Anyways, you guessed it, but Ruth has a Bubba'd out, plastic sporter stock, and the extended magazine. It's unlikely that the stock negatively impacted accuracy, but the extended magazine conversion would reduce its reliability probably, and possibly force the shooter to be higher off the ground as opposed to using the short 10-round box magazine. But really what did it for me, the scope mounting system. Holy shit. I think I'm gonna be sick. This motherfucker is just electrical taped on there. Maybe it's possible he put tape over a couple hose clamps or something, but even then, he's in real bad shape. For scopes to be accurate, they need to be stable and properly zeroed. I've had very good rifles put out foot-wide groups at 100 yards because of a bad scope mount. Even then, there was no discernible wobble in the optic at all. In other words, it can look and feel like it's mounted correctly, but it actually isn't. So I don't know how this dude could have gotten a reliable zero on this optic, or how he could possibly know that when he pulls the trigger that the shot's going to go where he wants it to go with this Tim Taylor bullshit going on right here. Worst of all, eye relief. I don't know what kind of scope this is. I can almost guarantee it's a Chinese Walmart special poop tube, meaning it probably has awful eye relief. Eye relief, that's the distance that your eye needs to be from the optic to get a clear look at the crosshairs inside of it and your target. Cheap optics will have uncomfortable, unforgiving eye relief, meaning your eye has to be in a very certain exact spot to see through the scope clearly. Most scopes have 3 to 5 inches of eye relief, meaning your eye has to be 3 to 5 inches behind the optic. I would have loved to have seen this dude mount up on this rifle with his eye 5 inches behind the scope. Look how far back this scope is. Was he resting his chin on the butt? If so, I'd say it's probably good practice for him, because he might find his chin on a lot of butts when he gets sentenced to 2 decades in federal prison, but I digress. My guess here is he might have been putting his eye all the way up to the scope to see out of it, maybe. This is typical with amateur shooters who think their face needs to be literally touching the scope tube when they shoot. We call that making yourself a pirate, because you can guess what happens when you pull the trigger and that rifle jumps back with recoil. And in case you're wondering, here's the difference between Trump Assassin Gun 1 and Trump Assassin Gun, the sequel. Trump Assassin Gun 1, the AR-15, not bad, decent optic. I would consider wagering even money on making repeated hits at 300 or 400 yards with that rifle the way it was set up. It seems like the first shooter was just incompetent, unlucky, and or nervous. This guy's gun, on the other hand, and I mean this not trying to be funny, I would not confidently tell you that I could make a hit at 100 yards with that rifle the way it's set up. Good shooters like Henry over at 9-Hole Reviews would be 99% accurate inside of 150 yards with a plain Jane SKS and no scope. The SKS was actually the first centerfire rifle that I learned how to shoot. My dad, a Marine, taught me how to shoot tab cans. Yeah, that disgusting Coke knockoff in a pink can. Thank God they're not making that shit anymore. We would shoot those inside of 100 yards all day, easy with irons. Final verdict. SKS would be serviceable in this role, give you a good shot inside of 200 yards out of the box, possibly 300 or more with a good optic. But the way this one was set up, even an expert shooter might not be able to make a hit at 100 yards. Trump was reportedly over 500 yards away from the shooter when Ruth was discovered. I don't know, maybe Ruth was thinking this was on a golf course, so maybe if he misses once, he gets a mulligan. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe out there. If you learned one thing today, if you modify an original SKS like this, you're going to federal pound you in the ass prison, and you deserve it. I'm not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. Goodbye.